It's funny that giving myself the mental space to create the work that I want to can come with a huge sense of guilt sometimes, despite the fact that being an artist is quite literally my job. I'm working on a new series at the moment, and I haven't worked on a series in quite a long time, and I'm actually trying to move away from complete representational work and reach a place of semi-abstraction, which is a journey for me, it has to be said. But this week, I finally made progress. So I'm heading out to an art shop out in the Yorkshire Dales actually, and they just happen to supply unison pastels, which is exactly what I'm after today. There is perhaps no greater joy than shopping for new art materials that you know you need, and the art shop at Skipton had a lovely range to choose from. I was in desperate need of some dark values and light values. So, with everything laid out, there was one last thing to do. This whole series so far has been drawn on pastelmat paper because I end up putting a lot of layers on these paintings and I don't want all the pastel falling straight off. I work with a selection of unison pastels, Jackson handmade pastels, and then just some random brands that I have lying around. Getting started on these works is a funny kind of experience. I always feel as though I'm off to a flying start. And then we hit that middle stage, and with this one, I was so close to ripping it off the wall and putting it straight in the bin. And the reason I didn't was thanks to a book that I read about 5 years ago, which I'll tell you a bit more about later, because it's my secret weapon to getting through any kind of creative block that I'm experiencing. It was around about this point in the painting that I decided it was probably destined for the bin. I was a complete failure and I was never going to make it and should just go and find myself a real job. You know the thought pattern. Luckily, I returned to the process that I read in this book I was telling you about. And actually, in the process of making this video, I tried to find my copy and realised I didn't have it anymore. So I took a lovely walk through the Valley Gardens close to where I live and headed into town to find myself a copy. And remind me why I found this book just so valuable about 5 years ago. I might have got slightly distracted along the way by some very pretty art books, but eventually I found what I was looking for amidst a sea of books promising to change your life forever. Now, I am long since over the self-help revolution, but I was happy to get Rest by Alex Soojung-Kim Pang back on my bookshelf because it is a really good read and includes so many case studies of famous creative thinkers that it's kind of hard to ignore the science in this. The book talks about something that sounds really unartistic called the default mode network, but actually it's something that creative people have been using for probably hundreds of years without knowing that it's an actual thing. Effectively, it's when you allow your mind to wander, and for me this is best if I go for a walk. So that walk I took when the painting was just turning into mush was no accident. I did it purposefully because it allows me to come back with a refreshed mind, but also that crafty default mode network that sits and puzzles through your issues subconsciously, tends to come up with some solutions for you that you might not have come to if you were consciously thinking about the issue. Kind of thinks more outside the box. I tend to use this trick when I'm trying to overcome issues on content or a new direction for something in my business. I tend to find that the longer I sit and actively think about it, the worse it gets. And as soon as I go for a walk, I'm flooded with fresh ideas that would never have come to me if I hadn't left my desk. And when I came back to this painting, I saw it with fresh eyes. I also realised that it was ticking several boxes that I was after, and I had a new direction in sight. And I realised that I was getting closer to this state of semi-abstraction that I am really interested in and find very hard to get to because I am much more of a representational artist. It's kind of like learning to draw all over again and unlearning everything that is almost ingrained to me by this point. Someone recently commented on one of my YouTube videos that artists are the one type of person that they cannot understand when they open their mouth. And I think my response to that would be, I don't really understand my own brain sometimes, or where these ideas come from, or the motivation to create something. Perhaps it's just that creative people are slightly more in touch with their subconscious, laterally thinking brain than others. And while this might not always make sense, it can also create surprises that other people may not have been able to imagine.